like, I could feather that out. And she was like, good. Like,
yeah. Why don't we get the conversation going? Hi, I'm Gary Malcolm, as you know, and I'll be kind of hosting these Founders Live conversations going forward. And just want to say thanks for being here. And then before we jump into introducing Alex, just want to mention that there is a Founders Live event tonight, Emerging Black Founders, in partnership with the Black Channel Partner Alliance. So really great event, big event. And I don't know, Nick, if you have a couple of words you want to say about that, or shall I pass right on through?
Yeah, we're excited about the Black Founders event. It starts at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to post the link in the chat right after I'm done talking here. But yeah, really, really great. We actually have, there is a founder, one of the 5 from actually from Africa in Nairobi. And then the 4 others are from North America here. But looks to be a strong event, should be fun. So hopefully you all can check it out.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nick. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about you, Evolve Leadership, and what's your mission to just kind of set the table.
Yeah. Again, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate being here. So quick background on me that'll lead up to Evolve, or actually maybe the other way around. Started Evolve with the mission of being the help we wish we had at different points in our careers, whether it relates to clarity in our path, getting the skills we need to be successful, getting that training or that leadership skill, development and coaching that, again, we wish we had. So for the last 14 years or so, I've been in sales and consulting and training. And I worked for big companies. I worked for startups. I sold to big companies. I sold to small ones. And I kept seeing these common themes over and over, where there were certain skills lacking in the corporate world, where there were certain roadblocks that I felt like I was facing against because of lack of maybe training or coaching or mentoring. And so over the course of, going from the corporate world to working with startups to starting a couple of my own businesses, again, there's just this reoccurring theme. And it's also something that we were, deeply passionate about, my co-founder and I, where we feel that there is this kind of baseline fundamental, skill set, if you will, that then helps you develop or helps you show up as a better professional in all these different areas of your life. And the more that, when we were selling into HR, when we were selling into sales leadership at companies, again, we kept seeing that kind of be the common denominator. And so we developed a training and a coaching system or methodology, if you will, that really stems from focusing on self-awareness and emotional intelligence as your approach to getting clarity in what your career path should be, how to, communicate and build relationships, how to develop those interpersonal skills so you can get the interview, land the job offer, get promoted, sell to that client, lead that team, et cetera. So that's kind of what I think makes us a little bit unique in this sort of, sales and leadership or sales training environment, is that's where we really focus on. We do the conversational skills, how to ask great questions, how to manage a process, a pipeline, a funnel, and all that. But it really stems from this core fundamental self-awareness and EQ perspective. And then from there, it manifests in a more productive way in these different areas of your career. So Evolve Leadership, that's at our core. That's what we do. We provide sales and leadership training for startups, and we provide career strategy coaching for individuals.
That's awesome. We behind the curtain here, Alex and I had a conversation before the conversation a couple of days ago, and I really got where Alex and where you guys created this was like, boy, I wish I had all of this material when I was younger, when I was going through this stuff. So can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's like, there's just so many moments. I remember, right out of college, I was 21. I started my career in financial advising because I got, some good advice or I got some advice that was good from their perspective, but it wasn't tailored to who I really was and what I really cared about. And it was, I got the advice that, hey, you should be a financial advisor because you can make good money and there's residual income down the road. When really, like, I'm not really passionate about the stock market, and I'm not, none of that world makes sense for me. I'm not knocking it. It just wasn't aligned for who I truly am. And so that was probably the first place where I felt kind of stuck after a few years in advising. I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't really like it. I was good enough at it, and I did it for maybe like 3 years or so. And that was one of the first times where I was like, how are you supposed to figure out what you want to do? Like, what, like, how are we supposed to figure that out? And then so I went into sales, and I had a couple more years selling software. And again, I was learning great things. And I look back at all of this and I appreciate all of it because I learned a lot of good corporate and business skills that I honestly see a lot lacking in the startup world. So I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I went through the corporate ringer to be able to do certain types of things regarding relationship building and communication and these other things. But again, after maybe 3 years or 4 years of that, I was like, I don't really like this. I feel really stuck. I'm really lost. I'm really confused. Why is it so hard to get answers? Why is it so hard to figure out what path you should be on? How come we're not taught this since we're like 8? You know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe we do know when we're really little, but our light is dimmed over time because like society telling us what we're supposed to do and what's practical and all these other things. So that was like the career side of it. I was like, why is it so hard to get answers? And I went and I think I did a lot of the things that we all do, where we start to read the books, listen to the podcasts, buy the online courses, go to the seminars. And I started to implement some of the stuff, but you're a little bit slow to start, or at least I was, where you go back to your old habits. But I was on this path where I was like, all right, I got to figure out what I want to do truly. And I'd also like to figure out how people figure this out. So isn't there a process that we can get answers like from? And then in 2015, I was in a major car accident. A young college gal was texting and driving. She ran her red light. I was making a left turn through a green arrow and just crashed into me at 45, 50 miles an hour. It's a 50-mile-an-hour road and there was no brake marks in the intersection. And so that was just a regular Monday night. I was going to pick up a friend for dinner. And I got home that night and I was I just was kind of just shocked that that's how easy, like I could have died that night. I was like, that's how easy it is. That's how fragile life is and how precious our time here is. You work out, you eat healthy, you try to be a nice person, and someone sending a text in their car can end your life. That just blows my mind. Luckily, I wasn't seriously injured and they weren't either. But that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I quit my corporate job only a couple weeks after that. I had already been working on a entrepreneurial project that had already been in development for some time. So I was like, I'm going to, if I could die at any moment, if any of us can, I'm sorry to be morbid, and I swear the conversation won't be all about death. For the next hour, we're going to talk about death. So I swear it won't be this morbid, but like that night, I was like, if I can die in like a week or in a month, or just, we don't know when, then I feel like I should be living a life that feels aligned with the things that I'm curious about, that bring me joy, and I could provide value to people in the ways that I care about, and not the ways that I was making decisions up to this point, which were chasing the shiny object. Can I get more money? Is this title fancy? Are other people who I don't even know, by the way, proud of me and think I'm successful? Even people I do care about. Hey, am I successful now? Is this making you proud now? Right? Is my LinkedIn profile look consistent enough? Recruiter, like those are stupid things. Like that's not what life's about. And yes, there's you got to be intentional about your career path. I'm not saying like just wing it all the time, but you got to follow the things that you're curious about, and from there you'll develop your passion over time. And we'll talk more about that later. But so that was that next thing where I went obsessed on trying to find answers around that. And while I was doing that, I found my stride in working with startups. I like sales, but I like being more consultative. I love coaching and training. My entire career as a quota carrying sales rep, I had always taken on some sort of trainer role. So that was like outside of my job description, but I did it because I love it. And I would go on ride-alongs with new sales reps. I would teach, weekly sales training classes. I developed sales training for a startup that I worked for. They still use it today. And so I always loved that part of it. and kind of the final piece was I went to go work for a consulting company to get that sort of like last box checked, if you will. I wanted to learn, like, what's the consulting world really like? Because that's such a vague title. Even now, people are like, what does consultant really mean? I'm like, well, it depends. Nothing. No, I was kidding. So I went to go work for a consulting company to kind of check that last box of seeing it firsthand and living that world. And what we did was we provided sales and leadership training and coaching and consulting to big companies. So I sold into mid-market and small enterprise, like just under $1 billion in revenue. And it was, I was the dumbest guy in the room for like 2 years, which is the right room to be in, right? It's also not that hard. But so I was learning a lot. I was working with all these really great people. And I couldn't help but feel the entire time that this is essentially important training, especially as you go up market in sales. The more B2B higher sales you go, the less it's about that like gift to gab. And actually, the more the sales cliches do not work for you. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today too, is like debunking a lot of sales myths and sales cliches, because they're the things that actually hold a lot of sales professionals back. But I also couldn't help but feel like, man, startups really need this training. I just felt the pain of this training not being here at the last 2 startups that I was with. They can't necessarily afford these multi-6-figure big consulting and training projects. Is there a way that I can kind of take what I'm learning here and help the startup community with that? And that was around the same time that I got connected to Nick. I started Founders Live San Diego and was hosting Founders Live for a while, because I was like, I get to immerse myself in this community in a non-salesy way. I get to learn from them firsthand what their challenges are. We're hosting these events, but I also am learning what this consulting and training and coaching world looks like on like a corporate scale. And so COVID hit, massive round of layoffs. I had already been kind of gearing up for doing this. It's been a side hustle, and it just all meshed, in some happy accident a year ago. So it's evolved, and that's kind of drawing in on all these worlds. I feel like that story might have been a little bit fragmented. I apologize, but
That's
perfect. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all sort of like pieced together, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's really great. And just for everyone, this is definitely a conversation, right? So like Nick put a question in the chat, you can do that, or you can raise your hand, and I'll be happy to like have you ask a question or bring something to the conversation, whatever keeps it moving forward would be fantastic. So along with what Nick's question there, so really kind of like, what are the common pitfalls of early stage founders that they make with sales?
Yeah, so there's a couple, and kind of alluding to the title of like, sales is an art and a science. And I think a lot of the old school approach to sales is that it's all on the art side, and to take it a step further, it's all on the people skills, gift to gab, outgoing, extrovert. And because I am not that, I can never sell. I'm a software engineer starting a company. I can't sell, or I don't want to sell. I'm not a people person or whatever. And that's what I heard from some clients I work with now, and where I've been at previous startups. And to debunk some of these myths, or I'm sorry, it was to the pitfalls to avoid, right?
Yep.
One of the biggest ones is that founders, even if they came from a sales background, honestly, sales is hard. So founders don't want to do it themselves in the beginning, or they'll do it like a little bit and then be like, oh, we need to hire a sales guy. We need to hire a sales gal. We should get, we got to get someone who's going to run these meetings for us. And in the beginning, I'm just going to get right to the point. You have to do it yourself. You have to sell your own product. You have to talk to your customer. You have to feel and be in the trenches and experience firsthand, what are their real problems? Not what you think they are. You can come in with assumptions and say, but I'd love to hear it from you, right? Don't hide behind the passion of your product or service. Be open to feedback, even if it's not what you want to hear. Be brutally honest with yourself, and go and talk to these people. Talk to who you're selling to. And part of the training and the coaching that I do with founders is I have kind of like clever ways to sort of fast track that, so it doesn't feel like such a pressure environment and like, oh man, I got to make 100 cold calls. Like, there's ways around that in the beginning. But the founders have to sell. And then the second pitfall is they close a couple deals and then they want to go hire a sales rep to then continue to carry the bag. And they'll figure out our sales process. They'll figure out how to run these demos. I'm going to hire someone who's really talented and they're going to kind of do it. They're going to kind of, build this sales division for us. The reality of that is that no one is going to be as passionate as you. No one's going to know your product as well as you. It is a very rare and special person to find that hire who's talented enough, creative enough, experienced enough, who's also willing to sacrifice the probable good income that came with that to go work for a startup and roll their sleeves up. It's just a really hard person to find. So you need to, as a founder or as the early stage team, you need to develop this process. You need to be talking to your people, selling start to finish, mapping it all out. And then you got to do it again and again and again so that it is consistent or repeatable. And then when you're looking to hire, you're hiring people who obviously you want talented and creative and people who are down to wear a lot of hats, but they need to plug into a little bit more of a proven process, not just like I have 2 or 3 companies that come to mind right off the bat who I was like, please stop this hiring process. I'll help you sell this, but you need to sell this first. And they went through it a few more times and they realized their approach was the wrong one. So they would have just went and hired someone, paid all this money. It's more than a salary, right? It's workers' comp and taxes and benefits, all this stuff. Well, maybe not benefits as a startup. Just for that person to go fail after 3 to 6 months or get pissed off that they can't close any deals and the startup's doesn't have their shit together, right? So I know I feel like maybe it's like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I can't stress that enough. In the beginning, the founders, you got to do it yourself. For the early stage team who's got skin in the game, you got to do it yourself. Then once you get a repeatable process, you can hire someone to kind of carry that bag that already works, right? Not just 1 or 2 closed deals and then base it on that hunch.
Right.
And then the other pitfall I guess it could be in the pitfall, and then it could also kind of be on like debunking some of the myth sides of things too. But one of the other pitfalls is, I think everyone does this when they approach sales, and I know I did it too, is we think of the old sales cliches of like that like super outgoing, smooth talker, a little bit creepy, that old car salesman, insurance salesman type. No disrespect to any car salesman or insurance salesmen out there. I sold insurance. Where like you all of a sudden are this weird, like not weird, like awkward, chipper, overly enthusiastic version of yourself. Like, oh, I'm in sales now, so I got to be like, hey, Gary, how are you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you make cold calls and you're all like extra excited, and then you're quick to pitch your product as opposed to listen and ask questions. And like a lot of people, because they're in sales, they'll adopt this sort of pushier nature. And that does not work in sales. No one wants to feel this pushy, high pressure thing. Another thing too is you feel because you have a quota or you're starting a business and you want revenue coming in, you could start to be very attached to the outcome. And then what that does is that gives off a needy energy. And there's maybe nothing more unattractive for anybody, personal and professional life, than a needy energy. And it's a weird thing because, I mean, I've even done it after years of sales because I was in a new sales job, and you like just revert back to this sort of weird salesy approach. So what I always recommend, again, train and coach on this, is if you like just take your sales hat off. If you had nothing to sell, but you were just going to have a nice, interesting conversation with another business owner who you're interested about the space, right? You're passionate about technology or your software. You're just a naturally curious person, and you should just be like a curious person, right? And then if you were just going to have a good conversation with this guy or gal who you might be able to sell something to, but you don't know yet. You don't know if there's a sale there yet. We're still learning about each other. What would that be like? You'd be more calm. You wouldn't be like trying to crack extra jokes that you would never like really say in your normal life. You wouldn't have this unusual tone or neediness or pressure or chipperness. And so like, again, I know this might sound like a little silly, but like, just your calm, cool, collected version of who you already are. And you're just having a nice, interesting conversation with another person on the other side of the table. And what would that go like? Well, you'd probably ask more questions about them. If they said something that piqued your interest, you wouldn't be quick to pitch something to them because there's nothing to sell yet, right? So you might say, oh, that's really great. Yeah, no, tell me more about that. Oh, that's been a challenge for you. So what have you guys done in the past to try to work on that? You would just have a curious conversation. And what I found is, both in my experience and with clients, is that calm demeanor, and that you're there to connect and listen and ask good questions and then be a problem solver, not a sales rep. You're already starting to win that person over in your first call. You don't need to focus on quick little tactics and tricks. Like, you could just be a good, thoughtful, curious person with good listening and attention to detail, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is making other people feel heard and understood. And if they feel that connection, like, you know what, Gary just kind of gets it. He's just like, I'm sharing with him and he's just picking up what I'm putting down. That's half the battle right there. They also aren't expecting it. They're expecting that salesy salesperson to show up and, you say two things. Oh, well, we could solve your problem by these features and benefits, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, okay, I've kind of heard this pitch before. So again, a very long-winded answer, as I can tend to be, but
yeah, this is a
I gotta take my own advice.
This is a really soft landing for me to host, because I could just throw a question out and you're just gonna go. This is really great.
You can go pour a cup of coffee, you can go run some errands.
But what I also heard inside that, Alex, is just that really you're not saying, hey, this is like a sales conversation. This is just an authentic conversation where you're genuinely interested in what that other person has to say. So it's almost like, yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments they want to throw in here?
I have a question. So I work with a founder, and I have suggested him to come to these. He's currently on vacation. But I also am starting my own consulting business kind of thing on the side, / maybe it will become real like all the time. And, I've really just been always a very curious person about just startups, mindsets, like founders, and just like absolutely kind of inspired by like the tenacity and not being risk averse and wanting to really challenge themselves and also challenge an ecosystem. And so I've like met with a bunch of people, and then now at this point, I think, I'm basically been doing the same job, like for this startup as an internal consultant, helping them with kind of growing their business into more of a fundable business instead of a small business that nobody's going to keep an eye on or expect, more quality, like higher, the type of stuff that you would have an investor need on like a business plan, business models, but, and so same thing, like going into consulting, kind of helping with that kind of stuff as well, but maybe more on like a market research and awareness just in the health tech space, because I have so much history as being a clinician. And so I got my first consulting job and then building my own brand in a sense.
Yeah.
But now I like kind of already have been in this network of people just as a curious person for so long.
Right.
Now I'm like kind of feeling a little inauthentic being in them, because there is a value to being in these networks myself now for income. So how do you work that through your head in a sense that you don't want to be inauthentic anymore? Because I'm seriously just as curious and like love helping people. That's my job, like was my job. But I also don't want to do it for free anymore.
Yeah.
So yes, what's that like?
That is a really great question. Thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, I'm curious to hear more about what the type of consulting you're going to do. I know you said market research, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But just real quick, if anyone else wants to answer this question too, feel free to chime in. I went through the same thing, and I still kind of do, because I like just genuinely love this so much. And I'm like, I used to feel a little inauthentic now asking for money or their business depending on the environment. But the reality is that you provide a tremendous amount of value, and that is the value exchange for your time. and you can kind of practice your language of how you share what it is that you'd like to do. And if they'd like to continue working with you, that'd be great. We could schedule a time to have a chat, but you're not giving that pressure energy that it has to be about that. And I can already tell you have like a good, calm way about you. And it seems like that's like authentically true. You are curious. You're not like the shark in the water at these events. You can, you can pick up the difference between the people right away. So I think there's probably, more to this answer, but just practice that mindset that everyone, there has to be some exchange of value. You're not doing anything sneaky or slimy or behind the, just kind of sketchy by also being in the business of being able to help people in the capacity that you can. And yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like practicing the mindset and practicing the confidence that comes with like, yeah, I should charge for this. I do have a lot of value. I could give some free value, but there's also, if we want to keep the conversation going, these are my rates type of thing. Real quick, does Gary or Nick or Steven or anyone want to chime in and share?
Yeah, you really captured it there, especially on that last bit, and Nick's comment in the chat too is the same thing. It's really like, look, it is the value, right? And if it's, and as we've learned in business, right? Like if we do things for free or cheap or whatever, people don't have it that it has value. So it is, perfect.
Yeah. And it's a great question too. And it's something that I still even struggle with. I don't want to say always, but I still pretty often overstep my own personal boundary of giving my time away. And it's something that you just get better at with practice. And then I don't know, did anyone else want to chime in? Because I have more questions for Sarah.
Yeah, Steven's got a comment here.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief. So I still struggle with that because I like generally what I do. So you tend to want to give it for free and undervalue stuff. I mean, the whole story. Something though that flipped the switch a little bit for me was a book I read by Daniel Lapin, a Jewish rabbi. And he goes about 3% of the population US is Jewish, yet 40, blah, blah, long stories. But the bottom line is 44,000 years of the way of thinking about money. And the short and long of it, for them, it's a certificate of value given. So if you've exchanged value and you're not comfortable to ask, well, confirm the value by giving me the certificate so that if someone else does something valuable for me, like give me a car or something, I can return the certificate of value. And therefore, they're not shy about asking because it's genuinely about the value, but you have to prove the value with a certificate. And if that's not happening, you're actually shortchanging your client at some point because the scales are not balanced and somewhere it's going to go wrong. So that being a certificate, the value conversation, but yeah, make sure you follow through on the value by insisting there's a certificate. At some point, someone else is going to ask you for it to prove their value to you by giving them the certificate. And that's just a mindset switch that kind of helped me a lot. So I hope it helps.
Thank you for sharing that.
It brings me back to that whole the skin in the game conversation, right? Charge somebody $5 to show up to something, you're going to get a better turnout than free because they're committed. They've done something. They put something into it, right?
Yeah, great responses. Nick, did you have anything? I wasn't sure if I saw you start to. Nick, I'll go on.
There's two.
Oh yeah, no, a lot of this is just coming together. It's just great to hear some of these things, but I'm in a pretty similar position, Sarah. I've been actually talking to Gary about it lately. Just I'm working in a startup basically, and so a lot of stuff you were saying, Alex, was really helpful. Like, okay, especially mentality wise, like I'm one of the people in the beginning, and Gary and I have been talking about this, but like it's on me kind of thing, doing the sales, and especially I'm the salesperson they hired. That's like, so a lot of it has been what you said was really good to me, is like buying into what we're doing. And I think that was something that over this last week or two has really been solidifying and noticing, like you said on the calls, more of like a, hey, is this a good time? Kind of thing. Like I just actually wanted to find out what you guys are doing for, we do fundraising strategy and marketing for nonprofits. Cool. And I love it. I love the concept. I just like, sometimes I don't know a lot of stuff that I don't know. So
Right.
just actually, even this week was kind of like, can you maybe teach me something that I don't know about what you guys do or how it works? And
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
People
getting
always love to
curious.
talk about
So,
their stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Good for you, Nick. Keep it going with that same kind of, it's a curious mindset. Not, and again, it's still a numbers game. Some people are going to like
Yeah.
tell you, hey, no, thanks. Don't call me anymore. And they're like, oh, I did. Okay, sorry. And then
Yeah.
other people are like, oh, sweet. Yeah, I'm glad you reached out. We just had this chat a week ago. We're actually trying to figure out how we're going to fundraise this thing. Like, it's just especially that first cold outreach. And I just like did a whole video recording thing on this where it's like, at first you're just there's no sale. You don't know if you're a fit yet. So you're just kind of being this curious person, introducing yourself, getting on their radar as a resource. Would love to learn a little bit more about what you do. And it's not like you're not going into a pitch on the phone of all the things we do. You don't know if it's a fit yet. And
Yeah,
that
and I've done that for
takes
6
the
months.
pressure off.
So
Yeah.
and it was great to hear you said the art and science, because for me it's actually more the science piece. Like I am very naturally extroverted. Like I barely know how to use a computer. I'd rather just be with people, like just, and I'm in digital marketing.
You're speaking my language, man.
So a lot of it is, like I'm like, okay, how do I actually not try and be super excited? Because I get like puppy syndrome is what I call it. Like there's somebody picked up the phone, like, hi.
Yeah.
Where have you been? I've been getting like cold
Same.
calls for days and nobody answers. So to actually, like you said, kind of just be like expectant almost of a conversation and just kind of see where it goes and be curious. So this was, it was good to hear.
I had to dial, and still I have to dial my energy and enthusiasm back, especially if I'm talking about something I'm passionate about. I can't sell something I'm not passionate about. And that like almost comes back to like the whole career clarity piece, where it's like, if you really figure out these are the things you're interested in, these are the skill sets that you provide value, and then you stay in those lanes, you're going to naturally be a more enthusiastic person, curious, more passionate. Everything goes better in your career. One of the things I found seriously challenging was, I was at a startup and we could sell into either marketing or into IT. When we sold into IT, I had a very hard time talking the talk, caring about the talk, and connecting with folks who were not sharing some level of engagement or passion. And that was part of my criteria as I would take notes of what I was looking for next, was to like not sell directly into IT. I need to, because before that I'd sold into HR, and like HR and sales departments, those are my people. Because you talk to a bunch of people, like everyone on this call is just like down for a great, interesting conversation. So it's great that you are passionate about it, and I don't want you to like dim your light. Don't like dim it down too much, because the enthusiasm is really great and it's infectious, and it enrolls people in your vision and what you're trying to do. But the process stuff, I could share more about this in this call, or if you want to connect afterwards. The process stuff too, as the art and science, the science side of hitting those daily activity. The daily activity numbers and things like that, but also like really doing a great job of CRM, your pipeline and your funnel stages, and like being really disciplined around those things. That took me way too long to learn in my sales career. Because for me, I was like, screw Excel. I'm going to just write it on a notepad here. And I have my little target client list. And my manager's like, that needs to be in Salesforce and logged. I can't believe you think that's an effective way to go about it.
That's a lot. I love that you shared that bit about the energy part and the enthusiasm, because like Nick and Alex, you guys could be brothers, right? Like you have that same sort of energy. So it's really fantastic. I want to make sure that we get to the whole debunking some sales myths conversation that you mentioned earlier, Alex. But also I got that you also want to get some more info from Sarah too.
Yeah, well, Sarah, just curious on like what kind of consulting you wanted to do, and kind of how you came to that path.
I'm still learning that, because I am a person who can usually teach myself anything, and like to a much more extreme than most people would probably teach themselves as a hobby. But I've recently kind of gone out of the healthcare space, like actually providing it, because I felt very frustrated with it. And again, that passion was like kind of going away, because I just felt like I was just in like almost enabling a system that doesn't work. But then I felt like really driven to go into, kind of helping with innovation. So either a lot of, you know, people are making products that they don't understand the network and the ecosystem of healthcare, and like the like just terribly de-incentivized, you know, ethically incentivized and morally incentivized, but not financially nor systems incentivized. And you know, try and help out like great innovation to actually be successful, because they can then help them set up their financial model, help them set up their implementation design, and also just what market they should be in that's going to be the most traction and that kind of thing. And so just helping, just kind of consulting on that, because I know how it would be implemented. I can look at other competitors and see where there already is gaps and where they're going to struggle. And so I can identify that for whatever, I mean, right now I'm working for a remote patient monitoring company to just help, like, kind of tell them, why would you be better? Why is this one better in some scenarios? And like, they say they do this, but like in reality, that's probably not happening, because I know how this would be implemented and it's not going to actually work. Wow. So that kind of stuff, but also, you know, I've always, been interested in like business planning, and like I'm starting to learn the investment part and like the smart investing part for my company, because it's a telemedicine company with a founder, and I'm trying to get them to a place where we can ask for money. But I also want to get companies in good spaces too. I think it's all about like creating some competitive advantages, and then being able to just create impactful innovation a lot faster.
Gotcha. And specifically for like healthcare tech.
Yeah, like digital health and health innovation, and focused very much on like a mission sense of like not just creating more waste, but in essence actually solving a problem. So bringing that company back to the problem, rather than their solution is great, but like, here's how you can tweak it, because this is what really solves the problem. So now you're making it work, you know?
Wow.
But I haven't really done much of it. Again, like I got hired, I kind of like converted it myself. But again, like I have not tried to convert anybody else. I just saw an opportunity, and I'm in a place where I feel confident enough to do it myself now. But again, like I was also evaluating what I've been doing in this, you know, startup, and realizing like I know a lot, you know, at this point.
Good for you.
Yeah. So.
You're smart. That sounds way more complicated than sales training.
Well, but all of it's sales. Like honestly, as a healthcare provider, and a lot of times I tell people this, and I feel like I could be good at sales. I sell people their health. They literally are not, their priority is not their health. They came in because they had to. And I found I usually can find a way to sell them how to advocate and engage in their health themselves, and make it higher up on the priority list. So I feel like I've been selling my entire life.
You haven't. Everyone is in sales, whether they like it or not. And if anyone objects that, it's like, okay, have you been in a relationship, or do you have kids? Enough said. So we're always in sales. We're always trying to influence outcomes, and the degree that we can do that and control and at least influence outcomes in our way is going to massively improve the quality of our lives. I think that every single thing boils down to conversation, relationship, and influence, and your whole entire life blooms from there. But you are good at sales. Being good at sales is more of being a thoughtful problem solver, consultative problem solver, who's connecting the dots for other people. And I mean, if you're solving other people's problems and then connecting into your service, you might also be like, you know what, we're actually not the best fit for you, but here's some of my recommendations. And that's being good at sales.
I do that all the time. I mean, I mean, it's all about the relationship later on, or if they can suggest it, but I really honestly, like, that's what I get out of other people. I've been sold to all the time. I mean, healthcare, like you get pharmaceutical reps, and we were one of the only practices taking them. So I saw the pitches, I saw who did really well. I saw the people who could read my decision making, and I would give feedback to them, because I'm like, dude, like, I know, and I want you to stay in business. Like, you're a great person, but like, stop feeding into like the stupid sales pitchy stuff, because you've told me this 70 times. And I mean, that's part of their thing, is that they want to just show up and take up space. And so they do only know how to do it that way. And I'm like, you are going to get kicked out of so many practices. Like, I'm this close to telling you that you cannot come in here, because I can literally tell you your pitch back to you.
Yeah.
don't even bother. Just be a nice person and let me enjoy your company. Like, that's really all I can do in this moment.
You're speaking my life. Can we collaborate on a testimonial? And you can
Yeah,
just be
yeah.
like, this was my experience with the farmer reps. And I'm like, see, I told you this is what's important, because that's so spot on.
Yeah.
You got to, I highly recommend these two books, but both things were brought up with the exchange of value and also what you were just talking about right now. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, former FBI hostage negotiator, and also just like probably just the coolest dude on the planet. And his company's the Black Swan Group. So I think I'm listening to that book. So I'm on a road trip right now. Couldn't tell the hotel. I think I'm like, it's the third time I'm listening to that book and just getting good nuggets at it. And then the other one is The Like Switch, like the science and psychology behind being likable. And he has a pharma sales rep example in there. And pharma sales is a tough one because you can get pigeonholed into that like order taker sort of thing. And then you end up kind of becoming that person, or you can learn how to like navigate a more productive and thoughtful conversation with the doctor. So anyway, without digressing too much, I just wanted to share those two before, in case I forgot to later. The Like Switch and Never Split the Difference. So good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. Really great contribution.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Sarah.
you're setting a tone, Sarah. This is two talks in a row. Yeah.
I mean, that's like my problem is I'll like ask some really deep stuff. So like
That's
this
really
is a great environment for me because I love how deep you guys get.
Yeah. Deep away.
Deep away. Well, let's go deep. Let's go into myths. Like let's debunk some sales myths. Alex, drop some knowledge.
Yeah, so I think I probably covered the big one of that sort of salesy personality. That's like salesy persona that we take on, and you got to like, you got to just, I guess, be observant of your behavior, and also, through efforts of self-awareness of being observant and getting feedback and being objective, talking to other people who you're running sales meetings with and getting feedback from them to make sure that you're not falling into that trap, because I still can fall into that trap because I'm enthusiastic, like Nick and I were talking about, where it might, for that person, come off like, is this like legit? And it's like, no, I just genuinely am this excited. But either way, I could probably be more observant in the environment and maybe tone it down a little bit. Some of the other sales myths, I think, that you have to be an extrovert, you have to be outgoing, you have to have always been a people person. Those things, all of those ideas also kind of frustrate me because a lot of them are labels that we just got when we were younger and we like lived into them. Someone told you were shy when you were 8 and then you lived into being a shy person. People said you're either born with social skills or you're not. It's not true. It's a skill. Skills are developed. You take 1,000 jump shots, you're going to get way better at shooting jump shots. So skills are developed over time. And that's one of the other myths that, it's both with sales, but like across the board, is that, and this is actually like a big driving force of a message that I want to get out there, is like, we hear soft skills, we hear people skills, there's all these different terms for it. I like to call them human skills. And because it is more about how to connect with another human. It's not only what you say, it's how you say it, it's how you make other people feel. It stems from emotional intelligence. It stems from self-awareness. And there's practices I could talk about at the end to, kind of quickly start to improve those things. But I want to debunk that myth that people, if they aren't extroverted, that they can't go connect with other people. Yes, you're a little bit nervous too. I understand that. I'm nervous when I walk into a crowded room, and I'm a social person. They are skills that you can practice and develop over time. They are also not avoidable anymore, or maybe they never were, but people were able to. Like, the quality of your entire life and your career is going to have a lot to do with your ability to communicate your value and connect with people. It does not matter if you are a software engineer, or if you're in sales, if you're in finance, or you're in marketing. If you're behind spreadsheets all day and you don't really interact with clients that often, you still need human skills to get the job, to get promoted, to talk to your manager, to share the project, to collaborate with teams, to go home and share it with your spouse, to get along with your kids, to have a chat with your buddies at the bar, whatever. So there's no real avoiding it. So much so that I seek out a lot of this data and this information. And a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, when Jeff Weiner was the CEO of LinkedIn, they did this huge study, and you could Google it. It's pretty interesting, but they did this huge study of thousands of companies. Long story short, they said that strong interpersonal skills, soft skills, were the #1 most important thing that companies look for. And they are the #1 most lacking. It is the biggest skills gap. And it's for every job function, every industry. It does not, again, so I've worked with engineers. I actually was at a company where the lead engineer, brilliant guy, and a really nice guy, I liked him a lot. We got along really well, but he got fired because clients, and one in particular was a pretty major client, didn't enjoy working with him, and they had to get on the phone with him to talk about a custom dev project. So that great software engineer got fired for his lack of people skills. Think about that. That's a tough blow, right? But it's reality. So that's kind of this, like, I guess, just to recap that one, is the myth of, well, I'm not outgoing, I'm not an extrovert, I don't have social skills. That's just not true. It's just the habit that you've had up until this point of the way you communicate, of the way you view the world, of the way you view yourself. Sadly, probably given to you by some adult who is equally or even more so unevolved, putting their crap on you as a young person, right? That's where, like, so much of these labels that we live into come from. And then it's just you're repeating behavior over time. So skills like being a great communicator, connecting with other people, all of these things can be developed. Anything else before I keep rambling on my favorite topic?
Well, Nick's got a good question. The whole ABC, like, should we always be closing?
No, always be curious.
Ah, a new ABC.
I just came up with that. No, I'm just kidding. So I started saying that a couple months ago, and then I Googled it, and I was like, there's no way I made this up. And then it's like, it's also not that profound. But like, I was like, maybe can I start to brand this as something I say? So always be closing can be true in that you are closing or agreeing to a next step. And that's something, again, back to like the process side of how I run my meetings and how I train people to run meetings. To run an effective meeting, you want to stick to a dialed in process. I do and say the same things every single time to make sure that the meeting follows a framework that's as productive as it possibly could be. And to close out that meeting is always agreeing on a next step. So that's where always be closing can be real. So it's like, okay, great. So the next step here in our process would be to, show you a demo. Does that make sense? All right, great. Let's pull out our calendars. Let's schedule that right now. It's, like maybe on the other side of the coin, it sounds like the timing might not be that urgent for you. Is that the case? This is something that's more for Q4. We're in Q1 right now. A better next step might be to follow up in maybe 3 or 4 months, and we'll do a check-in, because you also don't want to waste time chasing a deal that's not qualified, right? So either way, clear next step to the point where, like, you can get off the phone and go tell, your manager, your counterpart, your founder, whoever, what the true next step is. And it sounds obvious and it's fairly simple, but it's an easy thing to forget. If you're busy,
it's still all of that's inside of being curious too, right? Like, because you're like, hey, do you want to take that next step? Do you want to, right? Like, it's all, instead of having anything unsaid there. That's really great. I also really love about like that repeatable process, like every meeting's going that way. Like, actually, that's some coaching that Nick and I are doing on one-to-ones, BNI one-to-ones, and building a whole process of like, hey, we're going to do this every time, and this is how you're effective. And now, and like for myself, I'm so practiced at it now, it just rolls. It's engaging, it's easy, and it's just there, right? And so I really love that. That's really, really great.
Yeah, thank you. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job of that too, which I'm glad to hear, because again, it's like a lot of the things to be great in sales. And I'm not trying to say like I'm so great. I have so much more to keep learning. I have plenty of friends who made 10 times it's not like I'm some guru, but it's the things that worked for me when I really caught my stride. It was having way more respect for the process and sticking to it, developing my discipline around that. I had always been quite curious of the EQ and self-awareness side. Gary was telling you, when I was in college, like I worked in we had a class called Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace, which is crazy progressive. That was 20 years ago. And then I was a paid student consultant in that. And the whole thing was like observing your behavior. And it was like brutal at first. You're like watching a videotaped meeting that you're in, and you forget that you're like, you know, like, but like seriously, you're like, oh my God, I look like that in meetings. Yes, this is how you look to other people when they're talking to you, when you're in a challenging conversation. This is how you're coming off. So it forced you to really level up. So the point I'm making is like respecting the self-awareness side, observing, getting feedback from people that you trust. How are you really communicating? Like how, not just how you think you're showing up, how are you really showing up from another person's eyes? Did you really listen, or were you just waiting to pitch your product? Are you practicing a process for your meeting where you always have an agenda? You do the time check, you ask certain questions, you pause for certain answers, you have your second and third level questions to unpack that need and make the pain a bit deeper, or the, a vision of the brighter future a bit clearer. Do we agree on the next step? Let's get our calendars out. And you ding, 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 you hit those kind of posts along the way, and it just keeps you, really dialed in. Obviously there's more to it than that, and it's tailored based on different sales processes, but that's kind of that general high level rule of thumb.
That's really great. It's, one of the odd benefits that have come out of this COVID lockdown context is that we're doing this all the time. So you can't help but see yourself. Yeah. And also if you've recorded it or whatever, you're listening to yourself a little more often, right? And and it does make a difference. I know it's made a difference for me to like be able to, let me check how many whatever else is coming up in my conversation, right? Like having those things there. And then Sarah posted otter.ai as a helpful way to hear yourself. So that's really cool. Tell us.
It's like a recording transcribing app. You actually can now, like, it's on Google Meeting. You can actually connect it to there, so it'll just transcribe your meeting. And then also it records the voice too. So that's the nice thing about it, is that you can actually go in and listen to yourself like 1.5 to 2x. You can look at the like transcribing, because it kind of like, then you're kind of like not exactly overly analyzing yourself, but like you also get to see how it looks in narration in writing, because it's a very different way of like hearing yourself, but also then you can like chunk it out if you wanted to. But I found it to be very helpful, because it's like, you do that for notes, and then you're listening to yourself at the same time, and you get a lot of reflections on that. And I also think that I agree with you. Like, I feel like even just what you're saying is, stuff that everybody should just do. I mean, everybody's in meetings, everybody's, trying to make compromises. You're selling to yourself, you're selling to other people in your team. And everyone wants to feel like they were considered. And I mean, like in particular, I find that actually like in healthcare, we're just really bad at that, because it's kind of like just like you're talking at people. And it just, obviously as a patient, they feel that way. So, it's all about kind of leveraging that connection, but also kind of running it as a leader, to set expectations and understand. But it's hard to do, especially when that other person is just all over the place. But I'm usually the person who's all over the place. So
me too.
I've had to do it to myself.
I appreciate you sharing that. And something that I gave a training on this, and I guess it was like right before COVID, and there was some founders in the group who were kind of like, I don't have time to give everyone my attention. And I think what happens is there's a connection between like, if I'm going to make this person feel heard, and I'm going to like make everyone feel loved and considered, that's going to be also a really long conversation with everybody. And it doesn't really have to be that way, where I think it's more about the quality of the time that you're with someone. If it's 30 seconds or a minute, but you give them your undivided attention, not that half-ass like, how's your day going? Like that just that just feels crummy, right? So what I had trained some folks on was like, think about where it's just, even if it's a small dose. We even had a training on this called like these micro moments. But anyway,
Yeah.
see, Sarah, this is me starting to go off on all these
Yeah.
tangents.
Well, let me, speaking of time, we're there. We're at the end. We're at
Okay.
the end of this conversation, and we could probably go on for another hour pretty easy. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Really appreciate the time and the conversation. And Alex, in 1 or 2 sentences, if you possibly can, take us out with, how do we deal with no?
How do we deal with no? My go-to has always been asking a question to understand where the no is coming from. What is it connected to? Is it a timeline thing? Is it just not really a priority? Is it a budget thing? If money didn't matter, would it still be a no? Just, what, like, where is it coming from? Why? Tell me more about
Be
that.
curious.
Be curious. Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Sarah, Stephen, Nick, Lewis, really appreciate y'all joining us today. We'll talk to you. We'll see you in a couple weeks for another one.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to
Same here.
keep the connection going. But thanks again.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
same here.